reflect the coordinates in x-axis. Taking our solution, the rule for reflection in x-axis, we have xy maps to x negative y. So that is the rule for reflection in x-axis. So when we take our first coordinate, which is a we know is -2, -5. If these coordinates are reflected in the x-axis, then we have a1 to be x is still x, so we have -2, but the y is negated, so negative of -5 becomes +5. Then b is 2, 3. So when the coordinates 2, 3 are reflected in x-axis, we have b1. The x is still the x, so 2 is still 2, and the y becomes negative, so 3 becomes -3. C, we have c to be -5, 0. So c1 becomes x is still x, and the y becomes negative, but we don't have -0, so it's still 0. Then d, the coordinates of d are 3 and -8. When reflected, we have d1 to be x is still x, so it is 3, and the y is negated, so negative of -8 becomes +8. So these are the coordinates of a, b, c, d when they are reflected in x-axis. Now, with the same coordinates we have here, let's take reflection in y-axis. For that one, the rule, which is xy, maps to -xy. That is, reflection in y-axis means that the x becomes a negative. Therefore, taking our a, which is -2, -5, the a1, when reflected in y-axis, the x becomes negative, so negative of the -2 becomes +2, and the y repeats itself. Then b, we have 2, 3. So the x becomes a negative, and the y repeats itself. C, -5, 0. That gives us c1. This is b1. So the c1 becomes, the x becomes negative, so negative of the -5 is 5, and the y repeats itself. Then the d, we have 3, -8. Therefore, d1, the x becomes negative, and the y repeats itself. So this is how to solve problems or reflect coordinates in the x and the y axis. For the x axis, the rule is xy maps to x negative y. But for the y axis, that is reflection in the y axis, xy maps to negative x, y.